All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of History Lessons. I'm the host, the journalist Sin-seer, and today I have none other than Tracey Lee. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, brother. You know what I mean?
You got a new single, The Pivot, out. We're going to talk about that. But before
Yep.
we do, take it back a little bit to the early beginnings. For those who may not know, where was Tracey Lee born and raised?
Well, I was born in Buffalo, New York, raised in the city of Philadelphia, man. That's the city I claim. Still got some great friends up in the upstate, you know what I'm saying, upstate New York. I lived in a lot of places, you know what I mean? I lived in New Orleans, I've lived in Albany, New York, I've lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I've lived in Wilmington, Delaware, I've lived in Atlanta, Georgia. I've lived in LA for a couple of months, you know what I'm saying? Lived in New York for a minute, when I got my deal. And I currently reside in the DMV area where I've been primarily for the last, 35 some odd years, almost 40 years, man. When I went to Howard University. So this is really like my second home. But Philly is where the heart is. You know what I mean? That's where I was raised. That's where, I got the cut of my jib a little bit. That's where, we fell in love with hip hop and, became an MC and all that good stuff, man. So Philly is where it's at.
Your teenage years, Philly. Take us back to a day in life, Tracey Lee.
Well, I went to a school called Girard College, which is a boarding school in North Philadelphia. It's it was initially an all white boarding school for orphans, and then during the civil rights movement, Cecil B. Moore and ushered in a time where equality. You know what I'm saying? So what was primarily, or should I say, all white, became a primarily all black school. You know what I'm saying? And it was once, for all males, but then in 1984 they allowed females in, and so it's a co-ed boarding school, which really saved my life, man, and it saved a lot of our lives because you still, one of the criteria was you had to come from a single family home. A lot of us didn't have parents. You know what I'm saying? Luckily, I had my mother. I have a great relationship with my father too now. But at the time, grew up in a single family home. Wasn't well to do, if you will, for lack of a better term. So, Girard College provided that space for us to it was a safe space. You know what I'm saying? Even though it was in the middle of the hood, it was a very safe space for us, and it allowed us to cultivate a brotherhood at the time, and then a sisterhood, a brother sisterhood type of situation later on down the line. But from an education standpoint, from a maturation standpoint, going from little boys to young men, you know what I'm saying? Girard provided that spot, so that space. So salute to Girard. And that's where, again, with that brotherhood, with that education and things like that, it allowed us to navigate, inside and outside of the walls. Because, in the 80s, man, Philly ain't no joke now, but in the 80s it was the same thing, you know what I mean? So, we had each other's back, and wherever we left outside of those walls, we had to rumble a couple of times. We had to rumble with, the neighborhood cats and all of that. And, being that small school, you know what I'm saying, that was behind the wall that everybody knew, it was always something that we had to fight our way through, but we did, you know what I mean? So, salute to that time, and salute to my school, my alma mater, when it comes to, that, aspect of my life, you know what I mean?
Right. What kind of hobbies and interests did you pick up at the time?
Music and sports, man. That was it, man. It was very competitive around there. Everybody, claimed to be athletes, you know what I mean? But this was in the inception of hip hop, man. So, if you wasn't MCing, you was DJing, you was B-boying, you was something, graffiti, something, you know what I mean? So, it was hip hop, it was music, it was sports. Those were, primarily the hobbies. If you're not to mention, you know what I mean, as a young man going downtown to going to Center City is what we called it back in the day. You know what I mean, going down to Center City, going to the Gallery Mall. You know what I mean, picking up, getting phone numbers when we used to have to write the phone numbers down. It wasn't no, you know what I mean, put it in my phone, put it in the chat. Wasn't none of that. You know what I mean. Seeing how many numbers you could get when you was down there and all that. But those were other hobbies that we had as young men. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, it was music and sports, at least for me.
Yeah, you mentioned the 5 elements of hip hop. For Tracey Lee, what was first for you?
Oh, it was MCing. It was always MCing. You know what I'm saying? I fell in love with the music aspect was, if I'm being honest, was at the top, but I never back then had the desire to be a DJ. You know what I'm saying? I had great admiration for the DJ, you know what I mean? But I never had that desire. I can I could blend records in my head. I know what records sound good with what record, but the actual art of it, you know what I'm saying? I never had the desire back then. I would just put records on the record player, not using the crossfader. I just take the record off, put another record on, you know what I'm saying? But MCing, I had a love for words. I always had a love for words. Still got a love for words. You know what I'm saying? And then, to be able to put those words over a break, you know what I'm saying? And do it in rhythm and figure out a flow, figure out a pocket, figure out a cadence. You know what I'm saying? Those are the things that intrigue me from the gate, you know what I'm saying? And using my voice, you know what I mean? I never understood how unique my voice was until somebody told me when I started rhyming, and I rhymed with it. Like back then you had a crew, you know what I'm saying? Like we was MC5. And so when for some people my voice stood out amongst the other MCs who were also, at least we thought we were good at 12, 13 years old. But, one of the things that helped me is that the voice stood out, you know what I'm saying? And those are the things that, when I listen to hip hop now and back then, the voice always stands out first to me. Voice and flow always stand out to me first. Then I'll figure out what you're saying after that. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I can't get to what you're saying unless the voice and the flow stands out. You know what I'm saying? Now what you say can make or break you, but right. I can't get to it unless the voice and the flow is there,
Right. Did anything materialize with the MC5?
Nah, man. I mean, we was kids, man. It was we thought we was doing something, but hindsight looking back, we were just learning. We were learning. We were emulating. We were emulating what we heard. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be the DJs in the park or on the radio, or what have you, we were emulating that. We hadn't found our sound yet. So nothing materialized. And I had another group after that called the Jazzy Three, which I thought was going to materialize into something, because that's when we got a little manager. We was going through the books, trying to figure out what's the best way to tour, all that kind of stuff, going to do little talent shows and stuff like that, rhyming on the block around the way, all that kind of stuff. But we still wasn't ready then, you know what I mean? But to answer your question, nothing materialized.
Jazzy 3 as well. Nothing as far as wax.
Well, we made our own demos. We had the back then we had the boom boxes with the double cassette. So the demos sound like trash. Let's keep it a buck, because all we doing, is recording in the space that we in, which is an open room. You know what I mean? No studio, none of that. But we just put on a break on one side, put the microphone in the box, record on the other side, and that was it. That was your demo. And I call myself putting that in the mail and sending it to Next Plateau, sending it to Profile, sending it to Def Jam. And I know why they didn't, take the bait, because it sounded like trash. But we didn't know. You know what I'm saying? We just was hungry to, get heard. You know what I'm saying? Because we thought we was dope. So let's send it to New York. Let's send it to the record labels. You know what I mean? And all that kind of stuff. But again, but I will say we started to gain popularity around. We started to build a little bit of a base. We started to gain popularity at the school. We started to gain popularity in certain neighborhoods in Philly. You know what I mean? Words started getting out. You know what I'm saying? At one time, actually, I call myself one to battle Steady B back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Like back then, if you saw an MC in the street, you wanted to battle right then and there. We didn't need the lights, cameras, and the action. We didn't need the setup and the contracts and all of that. No, on the spot, man. Caught you out there on the spot. Let's go. He didn't battle me, of course. I mean, because Steady had a name. He couldn't, he wasn't, he wouldn't have got anything off of battling me. Call myself one to battle Fresh Prince. You know what I'm saying? AKA Will Smith, because him Jazzy Jeff used to come do parties at our school. You know what I'm saying? And we'll bring Will with him. You know what I'm saying? And so Will would get on the mic, and then you at my school now. Let's boogie. Everybody know that I can rhyme. So yeah, let's boogie. Of course, he didn't battle me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm a nobody. You know what I mean? What do you gain battling me for? You know what I'm saying? You got records out right now. You dig? Um, but those were fun times, man. And those are the times that you did earn your stripes, and you started to, get a little bit of momentum. Started to feel good about yourself because a couple cats got in your ear and said you nice and all that. So, it was a part of the process. You dig?
Right. You mentioned some heavy hitters there. Will Smith, Steady B. I'm sure Cool C was on the scene as far as Schoolie D.
Yep.
What do you remember most about that early Philly scene before really?
Spectacular, man. Philly had its own. Philly had a chip on it. We had a chip on our shoulder because we was always considered little brother. You know what I'm saying, in New York, because we were so close in proximity. But we always knew we could hold our own, and they damn sure knew we had the best DJs. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Schoolie D, like you said. Shout out to Steady, Lady B. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Perry P. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, those are the forefathers. You know what I mean? Those are the people and foremothers. You know what I'm saying? Those are the people that set the stage for the Philly scene. You know what I mean? And put our name on the map. You know what I'm saying? And had people, a couple hours away talking about what's going on down there. Shout out to Pop Art Records, you know what I'm saying, who gave a lot of those cats, from up top of Chance, Roxanne Shantae's of the world. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the Goodmans, you know what I mean, who started that label. I think Pop Art doesn't get enough credit for its contribution to the culture and what it meant to the foundation with regards to commercial radio, you know what I'm saying? Being, giving artists, young kids, the opportunity to be heard on wax. You know what I'm saying? And have that opportunity to go out there and get shows and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, the scene back then was spectacular to me. You know what I'm saying? And everybody knew, in order to get it shaken, you know what I'm saying, New York was not the only place. You had to come through Philly. You know what I'm saying? You had to come through Philly to solidify a lot of things. You know what I mean?
Right. So after Jazzy 3, where does Tracey Lee find herself?
Well, we graduate from high school. We head on down to college. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Howard University, as you can see. You know what I mean? And I thought if I didn't get a deal by the time I got out of high school and I was going to hang it up. Well, little did I know that it would only take me a semester to get out of that train of thought. I ran into the likes of, my big brother to this day, Derek D. Angeletti, who also is responsible for me, getting my deal. Ran into the likes of him. There's another brother by the name of China Black. I saw them rhyming in front of this building called Blackburn Center. And that was like to hang out, you know what I'm saying, when you didn't have class and stuff like that. And I saw them freestyling in front of the building. And I immediately was like, they trying to pull me back in, and they certainly did, and it pulled me back in forever. You know what I'm saying? Because they were definitely spitting bars in front of that joint, and it was like, oh no, I got the feeling now. You know what I'm saying? And so, the pen never stopped from that point. And then, Howard provided a platform for not only cats like myself and D-Dot and, other people that I went to school with, like, Marlon Wayans and Taraji was there at the time. I didn't really know it like that. But Anthony Anderson, that's my guy. Eric Roberson, you know what I'm saying? The group Shy, If I Ever Fall in Love. Like all of us were there at the same time, you know what I'm saying? Chadwick Boseman was a little bit later, but it was the there was an entrepreneurial spirit, you know what I'm saying, going on at the time, and then you could tell everybody was going to be something. We didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but everybody, the energy kind of rubbed off on everybody else. So whatever avenue you were trying to take, you kind of knew that they were going to be successful at it. You know what I'm saying? And so, um, again, once I picked the mic back up, of course, the ultimate goal, I mean, the goal was to graduate, you know what I'm saying, to get my degree, but the ultimate goal now and forever remain for me to be a recording artist, for me to sign a deal. And so when I think about the path, for me, really getting serious with it back in high school up until the time I signed my deal in 1996, that was a journey. That was, at least 10 years, you know what I'm saying? So when you turn around and you look at, once you sign a deal, look at where you came from, you understand that it didn't come overnight. There was a process involved. And so, Howard University provided that space and was that incubator for, finally, brushing up the rough edges that we started with, as we, were talking about earlier with regards to things sounding like trash. The demo was trash to now it's sounding more polished. I'm getting with, some other cats that are like-minded. Like, there was a group by the name of, not called, still called One Step Beyond. There's another group, called the Reaps, who came a little bit later, but One Step Beyond, I met at Howard, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to Mike Jeter and Mary Barakna. Shout out to John Doe. We forged a synergy and we forged a crew called Power Move, you know what I'm saying? And with that, there were, again, like-minded individuals with one common goal. We all trying to get a deal. Shout out to Lance Mills. Shout out to DJ Parlay, who's my DJ. All went to Howard. You know what I'm saying? Again, for the one common cause and the one common goal to put this thing together to finally get a deal. So, it gave us business acumen, because now we're trying to raise money, doing parties, doing promotions, and putting that money back into, studio time to try to get a deal. You know what I'm saying? So that's what Howard University provided, these relationships. It forced these, again, another set of brotherhood. You know what I'm saying? There was Girard College, my Girard College brotherhood, and then there's a Howard University brotherhood. And then, again, going after it, together, one common cause, it finally paid off and popped off when we signed our deal with Bob Stone.
Okay. Now, during this time, are you witnessing D. Dot transition to Two Kings of Cypher, or was
Oh,
that?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I watched the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I saw him rhyming in front of Blackburn. And then the next thing you know, a year or two later, him and Ron Lawrence, shout out to Ron Lawrence, they signed a deal. And they were kind of like the path that we watched and said, okay, let's see how this, transforms, if you will, or turns out. And, it's kind of like, you're in school and you're studying your lessons and we're looking at the lesson. It's like, okay, they made this move and they made that move and things like that, but yep, that during that time, that's when everything popped. And then, everybody was proud of him, you know what I'm saying? Especially me, because I'm like, oh, that's my bro. He doing it now, you know what I'm saying? And according to him and the stories that I've heard, again, these are lessons now. Lessons that you didn't know were going to come about. But you learn these kind of lessons going through this process. Even when getting the deal, you still don't actually make it per se. And I learned that lesson too. It's like you once thought getting the deal, you made it. Nah, that's just the beginning. You know what I'm saying? So, but it was good to see. You know what I mean? It was great to see.
Now, who did By Storm Entertainment consist of?
That's Mark Pitts, another Howard University grad, you know what I'm saying? Or attendee, if you will. Met him at Howard. Matter of fact, me and Mark came in at the same time. Of course, D Dot is the one that brought it to the table. And Mark, I knew Mark, but Mark didn't know I got busy like that. You know what I'm saying? So D Dot is the one that was like, yo, when you get your label, you might want to look at Trey. And so him and his cousin Wayne Barrow, they got a deal up at Universal Records. And I was the first, cat to sign a deal, or at least the first hip hop cat. They had another group on their label, Born in August. that signed with them as well. Um, but but yeah, man. I mean, shout out to Dot and shout out to the late great Notorious B.I.G. because Mark was managing Big at the same time. Now Big, I mean, Mark was an understudy of Puff, and so you know that's where he got saying a lot of his experience and stuff like that while working in that under that umbrella, and then eventually broke off and got his deal. But shout out to Big because um, not only did D Dot vouch for me, but when Mark got the demo tapes, Big was in the car listening with Mark, I'm saying, and kind of giving the cosign, like, yeah, your man is nice, I'm saying, before I actually signed the deal. So, I matter of fact, I was about to say, I think that, no, I know that is, part of the reason why if he gets the cosign from Big, not only D Dot, but gets a cosign from Big, then yeah, we need to make this happen.
Right. Now you talked about the group Power Move. Now, are you signing a solo deal at this time, or as a group with Bystore?
Nah, we signed a solo deal, but then the Reaps also signed a deal up in Universal too. It wasn't under By Storm, but because we when I signed my deal and the theme started to pop off a little bit, now they're looking at everybody. You know what I'm saying? And so the Reaps was the next one through the door. One Step Beyond was being looked at by Bad Boy at the time. This is even before I even signed my deal. Bad Boy was trying to, was in the works of doing something with them, back in 90, I want to say 2 or 3. You know what I mean? In the beginning stages of them, getting their distribution together. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, the Reaps came after me as far as signing with Universal. You know what I mean? And then One Step was right on the door. As a matter of fact, you'll find One Step on one of my records called Stars in the East. So we were setting it up. Much like I would say the Woo or any of those crews that had a collection of MCs where the plan was to, okay, we get one in the door, we're gonna get everybody in after that. You know what I mean?
Talk a little bit about the creative process behind the hit single, "It's Party Time," the theme.
Oh man, that's an interesting record because that was really the first record that I kind of I left some space in the bars, and when I say that, it's like, and shout out to Dot again. Dot is the ultimate MC coach. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't write your rhymes, he didn't write my rhymes, but he gave me a different way to approach and attack certain records. You know what I'm saying? If we're trying to make a record. So when I say the theme was the first record that I allowed the words to breathe a little bit, to give it some space so that the production, can also pierce through. You know what I'm saying? Because back then I just wanted to body every beat that came my way. You know what I mean? Like, I was always in battle mode. Like, everything was a battle. But he's the one that brought it to light. Like, okay, this is a different space. This is a different area. When you start talking about being a recording artist and you start talking about making hit records, you have to have a different approach to some of these records. Now, there are going to be opportunities for you to body certain things and all that. But this record right here, we can't do that with. And so the first rhymes, if people ever heard the first rhymes that I did to this joint, that's exactly what I did the first time out. I tried to body it. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, nah, Trey, nah, let's leave some space. Let's leave some room. Um, Going back to the sample, the Pieces of a Dream joint, I told him early in the game, I said, when we signed this deal, I want to use the sample because, not only is it crazy, and that was the joint that, Cash used to rock in the park back in the day, but it's from Philly, you know what I'm saying? Mount Airy Groove, you know what I'm saying? That's Pieces of a Dream. That's Mount Airy. Like, that's a direct representation of where I'm from. So I wanted to use that sample. And so, he took the sample. He had the hook already from, Schoolhouse Rock, the Nouns joint, you know what I'm saying? For anybody that was born in the 70s and used to watch Schoolhouse Rock on Saturday mornings and things like that, you know what I'm saying? He had the, in every place that you can go, and every, you know what I'm saying, their nouns. So you piece that together, you know what I'm saying? So we got, And everywhere to my crew go, and every girl to my crew, we get down. You know what I'm saying? Then he also puts in the Malcolm McLaren joint. You know what I'm saying? The Buffalo Girls joint, which is a sneaky part of the record. You know what I'm saying? But it's a very pivotal part of the record. And him and Ron cooked that thing up so crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like that beat is absolutely timeless. Like you could play the joint now, and I don't. And that was 30. It was 19. That was 30 years ago, man. That was 30 years ago,
Right.
and it still sounds like it's banging today. This is what 2025. So that's how you know you. We didn't know it at the time. At least I didn't know it at the time. But man, that record is a classic, man.
Right. Was
It's
it a
undeniable.